Let's be real for a second. The phrase psychological test can sound, well, pretty intimidating, right? It makes you think of these high-stakes, pass-fail moments where some secret part of you is being put under a microscope. But what are these tests really? It's time to pull back the curtain and see what's actually going on. This quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? This idea of a trial where the stakes are incredibly high, but you have no idea what the rules are. So our goal here is to demystify these things, to turn on the light so you can see how these powerful tools actually work. So first things first, we've all seen those silly online quizzes, right? What kind of bread are you? But what actually separates that from a real, legitimate psychological test? We need a clear definition. Okay, I know, that's a mouthful. It sounds super academic, but trust me, every single part of that definition is absolutely crucial. A real test isn't just a random list of questions. It's a very, very carefully designed process. So let's break it down into its key ingredients. All right, let's walk through these 5 things. First up, a test has to be systematic. That means it's given and scored the exact same way for everybody. That's what makes it fair. Second, it's based on samples of behavior. Look, a test can't measure your entire life, so it takes a small but relevant snapshot. Third, that snapshot has to be relevant to whatever's being measured, like thinking or emotions. And finally, it has to be scored and then compared against standards. That just means your results are put next to a larger group so we can figure out what your score actually means in context. So now that we know what a test is, where in the world did they come from? You might think they were just cooked up in a lab somewhere for academic reasons. But nope. It turns out tests were invented to solve very real, very practical problems. Their history is all about meeting a need. Just look at this timeline. It's incredible. We're talking over 2,000 years ago. The Chinese Empire was using exams to find the best people for government jobs. That's basically the granddaddy of modern HR. Fast forward to 1905, and you have Alfred Binet, who wasn't trying to label kids, but was trying to figure out which ones needed a little extra help in school. Then, boom, World War I happens, and the U.S. Army has to figure out how to sort over 1 million new recruits fast. And of course, the SAT comes along to help standardize college admissions. You see the pattern here? Every single time, a real-world problem demanded a solution. And right in the middle of all that, Binet's work sparks this revolutionary idea from a psychologist named William Stern. He thought, hey, what if we compare a kid's mental age, so the age level of the questions they can answer, to their actual age? You multiply that by 100 to get rid of the decimal point, and there it is, the intelligence quotient, or IQ. This simple formula totally changed how we talked about cognitive ability. Okay, so we've covered the what and the when. Let's fast forward to right now and talk about the how. How should we be thinking about these tests in our lives today? And maybe more importantly, who's responsible for the way they get used? If you only remember one thing from this whole explainer, let it be this. A psychological test is not a final judgment. It's not a crystal ball that tells your future. It is simply a tool. And just like any tool, its value or its potential for harm depends entirely on the person who's using it. This hammer analogy makes it super clear. A hammer is designed to build things, right? But in the wrong hands, it can be used to break things or cause harm. It's the same with a psych test. Its purpose is to help us understand people better. But if it's misused, if the results are twisted or applied in a way that shouldn't be, it can unfairly label people and close doors. The tool itself isn't good or bad. It all comes down to the user's skill and their intentions. And that brings us to a really key distinction. We have to judge a test in 2 totally different ways. First, you can look at the tool itself. Is it well made? Is it reliable? But the second you actually start using it, the focus shifts completely. The main thing that matters then is the skill of the person using it and why they're using it. A fantastic test in unskilled hands is still a huge problem. This brings us to our final and maybe the most important idea of all. We tend to throw around the words testing and assessment like they're the same thing, but in psychology, they are worlds apart. And understanding this difference is the key to everything. Let's make this crystal clear. Testing and assessment are not the same thing. Testing is just one piece of a much bigger, more thoughtful process called assessment. A test gives you a score, and assessment is the journey to figure out what that score actually means. And this table just lays it all out. Look at this. Testing is simpler, it's objective, and it's all about comparing one person to a group to get a number. Its purpose is just to get data. But assessment, well, that's a deep dive. It's way more complex. It uses all sorts of information: interviews, observations, plus tests. Its focus is on what makes an individual unique, and it relies on the clinical judgment of a professional to arrive at a real, meaningful decision, not just a data point. So we end with this question. A test is just a tool. It spits out a number, but that number on its own is meaningless. The person responsible for its meaning, for turning that number into insight and a path forward, is the skilled ethical professional working within that bigger process of assessment. The real power isn't in the test, it's in the hands and the mind of the person who uses it.